Yes, it may seem a bit bold, but I am.
Welcome home, co-journers. I'm glad you're here. I'm Dr.Thema Bryant, licensed psychologist, ordained minister, and sacred artist, here to facilitate the journey as you come home to yourself. We'd like to start today with a reading, as we do most of our episodes, and this will be an excerpt from the poem Morning Song and Evening Walk by Sonia Sanchez. Tonight, in need of you and God, I move imperfect through this ancient city. Quiet, no one hears. No one feels the tears of multitudes. The silence thickens. I have lost the shore of your kind seasons. Who will hear my voice, nasal against distinguished actors? Oh, I am tired of voices without sound. I will rest on this ground full of mass hymns. It was a time to be born, forced forward, a time to wander inside drums, the good times with eyes like stars, and soldiers without medals or weapons, but honor, yes. It was a time. Something moves out of the flames, call it spirit or apparition, till no fire or body or ash remain. We breathe out and smell the world again. I, oh, amen, men, woman, woman, woman. Yes, Sonia Sanchez. If you are not familiar with her work, please look it up, read her, and listen to her voice as she reads her own work. So very powerful as we consider the power of voice, the necessity of voice, and being tuned into the reality that the power of life and death lies in the tongue, that it makes a difference what we speak and what we hear. So considering that reality, our theme on today is silencing the inner critic. Silencing the inner critic. So many times we are bombarded with outside messages and people around us who may be super critical, who may be mean-spirited, who may bully us, who may oppress us, who may stereotype us. And we also want to be aware that there is a reality in which many of us are very harsh with ourselves, that we put ourselves down, we judge ourselves, we place a ceiling over ourselves because of the insecurities and the fears and the limitations. Some of that is born out of internalized oppression. So we have been told negative things about ourselves and about our communities and have come to believe those things. Some of those negative voices come from the ways in which we were raised, perhaps family messages, religious messages that we have come to believe that we are incapable in a lot of ways. And so we will believe falsehoods about our own capacity in terms of our own minds, our own skills, our own possibility. And so I invite you to take sacred pause, to recognize the ways in which you have been harsh with yourself, judgmental about yourself, condemning and doubting yourself. I invite you to take sacred pause to think about the dreams and goals that you talked yourself out of, to think about the life that you settled for because you believed that's all you were worthy of or all that you could hope for. I invite you to, with gentleness and self-compassion, take sacred pause to address that inner critic, the inner critic who tries to keep you safe by keeping you from dreaming, by keeping you from disappointment, by keeping you aiming low because of the fear that you might fail or that you may not make it or that you may not attain your dreams. So there are a number of keys we want to consider when we're addressing that inner critic. And the first one I would say is to recognize the inner critic when he or she shows up, to acknowledge that there are ways in which you have doubted yourself, ways in which you have cast your vision small, ways in which you have come in alignment or in agreement with people who did not think very much of you. And so it is important and empowering for me to recognize that voice and to distinguish that voice from the truth. So just because I have a thought doesn't mean it's true. Even if it is something other people have said to me out of their own meanness or insecurity or stereotyping or underestimation of me, that the thought or the words don't make it true. And a part of being able to recognize the inner critic is to be able to say, what is the story I have told myself about my own abilities? What is the story I have told myself about my own capacity? And so as we seek to shift out of that, we want to become aware of that inner critic and then allow ourselves to disconnect from that thought or that idea, which means I can entertain other possibilities. So someone may offer me an opportunity, and my initial response, my impulsive response might be the inner critic, which says to me, I can't do that. They must be mistaken. They must have picked the wrong person. And so I take a pause for mindfulness, a pause to be able to reflect, a sacred pause to question the truth of that thought and to consider what are the alternatives. So it's possible that they are offering me an opportunity that I don't feel prepared for. It's possible that while it is new, it is something that I could do. It is possible that I could access resources and people to help me prepare to do it. It is possible that other people who I see doing it had to have their first time as well. And maybe their first time wasn't perfect. Maybe their first time didn't look the way it looks now because they've had practice and opportunity. When someone approaches you in love or in friendship, if that inner critic tells you to reject it because they are going to end up rejecting you, I can slow down and say, yes, rejection is possible. What else is possible? It is possible that this person who is indicating some interest in me will actually grow in their care and appreciation for me, even as I get to know them and they get to know me. It is possible that this could end up being a lifelong friend. It is possible that this could be the love of my life. It is possible. And so I will not eliminate myself from possibilities because of the loudness of my inner critic. So you begin to recognize those thoughts and feelings that come up, to disconnect them from the banner of truth and say, what are some alternatives for me to consider? As I am taking sacred pause to consider that, we can also begin to look at the evidence that goes against that negative thought, right? So if on your job, someone says to you, a supervisor says they're considering you for a promotion, instead of me immediately thinking that I am incapable, let me look at what are the requirements for the job. What are things I have done that are perhaps similar, maybe on a smaller scale, but that would let me know if I could do it on this level, perhaps I can do it on this higher level. If I am not only being asked by other people, but let's say my own dreaming awakens, where I see something or experience something. Let's say you read a book and think like, oh, wow, I loved hearing their story. I would love to write my story. And then that inner critic shows up and says like, oh, you're not a good writer, or no one would be interested in your life story. And then I take pause on that and say, let me look at the evidence that goes counter to that. So maybe not everyone has loved everything I've ever written, but I do remember that time I had to write that paper or write that poem or share some reflection. And there were some people who enjoyed it. Or perhaps in terms of my own life's journey that I consider, there are a number of people who have had an experience similar to mine, and we don't usually get to see our story in writing. So there would be people who would be interested, either because they had a similar experience, or even those who haven't had such an experience would love to have insight into what my journey has been. So I invite you in this moment to consider the negative thoughts that you have been having about yourself, about your hopes and your dreams, and then to question the evidence, to say, what are some indicators or some signs that this negative assumption I have may not be true? And then we can also consider, what are the roots of these negative thoughts, right? Where did they come from? So if I look back, it may be, oh, my 5th grade teacher said I wasn't a good writer. Well, there's been a long time from 5th grade to now, right? And even if one person, even if they're in a position of authority, even if they're a teacher, said I wasn't a good writer, there may be other people who would enjoy my style of writing, the ways in which I express myself. So where did this negative thought about yourself come from? If you believe you are unlovable, if you believe that no one will care about you, if you believe you're not smart enough or not attractive enough, there may be some people or circumstances that made you believe that. But we want to be mindful to not overgeneralize, right? I like to say, you may not be everyone's cup of tea, but that doesn't mean you need to change your flavor, right? So there may be some people who don't like certain things about you, and they have made it a point to tell you that. There may be other people who will celebrate you and enjoy you for the exact same things that were the root of other people's rejection. So here at Homecoming, we talk a lot about identities and culture. And let's say, for example, in this moment, if you're a woman, you may have had some people say you have too many opinions to be a woman. Someone would like that you have too many goals outside of the home that would make you a good partner or spouse or mother. Or they may say that, oh, you're not attractive enough to make you desirable. And I want to assure you that the right people who align with you will appreciate hearing your opinions, will be excited about the life goals that you have, and will be able to see and appreciate your beauty. So we acknowledge the feedback or the criticism or even the insults that have come from other people, and we recognize that does not have to be the full story, that they do not get to have the final say or the authority for my life. It may just mean they're not the right person for me, or this isn't the right company for me, or this isn't the right publisher for me. But that doesn't mean that my dreams, hopes, goals are impossible. And so I like to think about it as I will continue to move forward in search of my yes, right? There will be no's. All of us get told no about some things. Some doors are closed, but they are not the only door. And so instead of me concluding that it is impossible for me to have joy, it is impossible for me to have success, instead I will say it may not be here and or it may not be now, but the location, the people, the timing will work for me as long as I don't surrender, right? As long as I continue moving forward. Along those lines, we also want to shift the messages that we tell ourselves. And we talk a lot here at Homecoming about being mindful of the stories you tell yourself and the stories you believe, because the stories that we hear and believe and say, we often then align our behavior based on those stories. So if I say, I can't do this because I've never done it, then how can I reframe that? Instead, I can say, I've never done it, but I can learn how, right? If that negative thought is saying to me, you won't ever be loved, so you should release the idea of having a love life and just focus on working, right? I can reframe that. I can re-narrate that to say, up until now, I have not had a nourishing relationship, but I value relationship and I believe I'm worthy of love. So I will be open to it when it shows up, right? So I'm acknowledging the truth. At this point, either it hasn't happened or it's been unhealthy, but it is something that I desire. It is something I believe I am worthy of, and it is something that I am open to instead of being shut down. So what are the negative thoughts you have about yourself that you could reframe, where you acknowledge the pieces of it that are true, but then shift the part of it that is false, that is harsh, that is overgeneralizing, right? So you may believe because of a health condition, physical, mental, neurological health condition, you may say, as a result of that, I can't have a fulfilling life. And so then I can reframe that. I can acknowledge whatever the illness or diagnosis is. And then my reframe of that may be, so what is fulfilling to me, or the journey to my fulfillment might look different than it looks for other people, or it may be different than the pathway or the timeline that I had imagined, but I can still have it and do it, right? So I, say to my students when I'm teaching, if they face delays, needing more time for their dissertation, or things slowed down because they started a family or they had financial hardship, that no one ever asks you, what year did you start school? They just want to know, did you finish, right? So instead of adopting the idea that I can never finish because it's taking too long or because I have these challenges that other people haven't had, instead I can say, regardless of the timeline, I will reach my goals and I will be right on time for where I need to be, given my life's journey or given my finances or given my family obligations. Yes? So we can reframe our story so that there is room for us to actually flourish and for us to thrive. I also encourage you to give yourself compassion and kindness and patience. Instead of being harsh with ourselves or condemning or judgmental, to be able to be my own friend, right? When I'm a friend to someone, when I care about someone, then I'm going to encourage them, even if they have made mistakes, even if they have difficulties, even and especially when things don't come easy for them. A good friend will stay in your corner. A good friend believes in you. A good friend will help you brainstorm other possibilities. And so the way I care for a friend as they are going through difficulty, I provide that same care for myself, to speak kindly to myself, to speak lovingly to myself and about myself. So that self-critic sometimes not only is that internal voice, but sometimes we put down ourselves when we're talking to other people. Sometimes it is out of kind of fishing for compliments, or I'll put myself down in hopes that they will say something nice about me. Or sometimes it is trying to push off rejection so that we won't be hurt or disappointed, to say, oh, you probably don't want me for that anyway, because, whatever self-insult we give. But instead, to speak and think kindly toward myself. Imperfections at all. That perfection is not required for me to believe in a friend, to believe in a student, to believe in a family member. And so for myself, to also say, I have not always done things perfectly, and I still believe I am capable, that I am worthy, that good things can still show up for me. So to help you to further push back on that inner critic, you can think about talking with a therapist, a psychologist, a mental health professional. Some of you may want to talk about it and pray about it with a faith leader, a spiritual leader. Some of you may want to journal about it. What are the negative thoughts, and what you think are the roots of those thoughts, the foundation of those thoughts, and what's the evidence that can help support you in rejecting those thoughts, recognizing what is true, but also recognizing what is false and what is possible. And then I want to name, when people talk about befriending your inner critic or giving your inner critic an identity or giving them space, I think we want to make a distinction between constructive criticism versus being an inner critic or an inner bully, right? So silencing my inner critic doesn't mean I pretend that everything is right or that I have done everything right. But you all know the difference between constructive feedback and destructive feedback, right? So I can honestly say to myself, let's say about something I'm doing, that wasn't my best. And, I procrastinated, or I was rushing, or I just didn't take time or care with it. So that's not something I need to silence. I want to acknowledge that, because at the root of that is my belief that I could do a better job if I gave it more time and care. And so I commit to doing that, right? That the next time I will give it the time and energy it deserves so that I can do my best, right? Or so that I can do better. So make room for constructive feedback. You want to be self-aware. You don't want to operate in denial. So I would say I will be the friend of my inner critic by recognizing what's something constructive that I can actually do something about, that doesn't immobilize me or make me stuck in shame or guilt, but let me speak to myself or think to myself in ways that I can grow, where there is room for me to recover instead of resignation or surrender. The other part about being a friend to my inner critic is recognizing with compassion where those thoughts came from. So then I don't have to be mad at myself for thinking them. It's, for some of us, really for all of us, when you look on your history and your life's journey, it makes sense that you have some of those negative beliefs, but that doesn't have to be your final truth, right? So if I find myself thinking a negative thought about my appearance, then I can say to myself with compassion, it's understandable that you think that way about yourself because of all the things that people have said to you, or everything you've seen in the media, or what you have observed about who gets chosen and doesn't get chosen. And so I want to give myself tenderness for that, compassionate understanding while I still challenge it, right? So yes, that has been the truth of your journey, but that is not the ultimate truth. And so there is effort involved in pushing past those various voices, but then to decide, even though I have lived with hearing those voices, I refuse to now join that chorus and say those same negative things or believe those same negative things about myself. So have compassion for yourself when those negative thoughts come up, and consider that ultimately, if I want to be my own friend and be my own supporter, that I don't want to be stuck or resigned, but I want to know that good things are possible for me. Good things are possible for me, and I am worthy of those good things. I invite your soul to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home.